And welcome to the Escape Podcast. My name is Nick.
And I'm
Always,
Adam.
and my beautiful co-host Adam. Adam, did you put out the fancy towels?
Yeah, it sure did.
Did you vacuum?
No, I didn't vacuum. The vacuum cleaner doesn't work today.
Okay. What do we put out the fancy china?
We put out the fancy china. I apologize for the condition of the floor, though.
Okay. All right. Because why do I say that? We have guests. So
Welcome.
excited. Welcome, guys. We have the creative team from Knights of the Chihuahua. We have Nate and Dave with us. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Hey guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah. So this all came about over Instagram. I think, was it Nate that you reached out and was just like, "Hey, what does it take to get a comic review?" And I was like, "Yes, let's do that." We're like, "We'll do that. Of course, we'll do that." So you reached out, and it kind of went from there. And ever since then, obviously we've been following each other. So you sent us the first issue, guys. Recently, was it just a couple weeks ago? Released issue 2 of Knights of the Chihuahua.
Yes.
All right. So and then also, and in that meantime, you guys have also been hitting the Comic-Con circuit. How's that going?
David, you want to take
Yeah,
it?
it's been going great. I mean, we've actually gotten a lot of really good exposure, and starting off a few smaller ones, and we're working our way up to Phoenix Fan Fusion at Memorial Day weekend, which we're really looking forward to. It's a very well-attended con, born and raised in Phoenix, and so growing up, going to it, and it'll be kind of cool having a table there instead of being the one, spending all my money at these tables. I'll still do that too. I'm still going to walk around and, spend lots of money. So hopefully others will do it for us.
Yeah. Right. So
I understand.
like trust me, I understand because we're in Metro Detroit, so we have our big Comic-Con coming up in May, and I already know it's going to be a very expensive Comic-Con. So but one of my favorite things to do is try and go down, Indie Alley and go check out what the independent guys are doing. So one of the things that I'm completely fascinated by what you guys are doing. So basically, you're taking a comic book with, I'm going to say, next to no help, and just trying to put out a comic book.
Yeah,
that sounds pretty
much
accurate.
Not to bash you guys, but very very little support. And Nate, you and I were talking because we're kind of trying to do the same thing, just on different mediums. We're trying to get YouTube going, and you guys are trying to get a comic going. And I think we grew up in a time where, like, our parents, like I grew up, my parents were in the trades, and they just kind of had this thing where you just got to put your shingle out there, and the work kind of comes, and you realize that's not how things work when it comes to social media and comic books anymore.
Not at all.
So,
Yeah, I was wondering. So where was the first? We spoke a little bit earlier. What was the first inclination that you knew that you were going to go on this journey to get Night of the Chihuahuas out there? And I love the title, by the way, and I'll ask you more about that in a little bit.
Thank you. Yeah, I think so. Nathan and I met each other. We were actually working as independent filmmakers, and so we met and collaborated on a few projects. What we realized was that with filmmaking, it's you got a vision, you've got a story that you want to tell, and you're very limited by production funds and access to a lot of things. And we both have visions that we wanted to fulfill, and we both happen to be comic book fans. And it was like, well, what about this idea now that Chihuahuas? God, we should totally just do that as a comic book because, with an artist, we get a talented artist to join us and help us out. And the sky's the limit as far as imagination goes. The artist is not going to be calling me up saying, hey, SAG-AFTRA is telling us that, we can't have anybody on set after 10 p.m. or, the Chihuahua Wranglers didn't show up and we no longer have access to an army of bloodthirsty Chihuahuas. We're now dealing with 3 untrained, very docile and friendly Chihuahuas. So it's,
the Chihuahuas to attack the PA,
Yeah. And so it's just, I mean, with a comic book, and I've all, just I've got boxes and boxes in my garage of like as a child growing up and always being a fan of them. And since I can't draw, it never seemed like something I could do. And it wasn't until starting to network with and finding other collaborators through film production, and then starting to find more artists. And it was like it just kind of like a light bulb clicked, and I was like, oh my god, I could totally. We've got people that we know that can draw and that are very good at drawing, and we can do this. And once we started looking into it and started putting everything together, it just kind of, it took off. It really did.
That's awesome.
That's
Speaking of
fantastic.
which, nerd cred time. So you talked a little bit on it. So what was and this question's for both of you guys. So what is the comic book that really hooked you guys and said, I love this? Or what character maybe?
Nathan, I'm gonna let you answer this first.
He's going into the pile. Yes.
Oh, Pitt,
Yeah.
yes. Yes, that's a great one.
Nice.
That was in the 90s. I mean, I just show real quick. This was my first comic. If you guys remember Atari, Atari Forest Ashcan.
Nice.
But in the 90s, I collected a group of friends, and we would just kind of nerd out, hang out, read comics. And at one point, we're like, oh, we can make some money off these. So there was a few that I kept, didn't touch, Spawn 1, Spawn 9. But that was, Pitt was my guy. I was in the military, and in boot camp, I drew an image from Pitt 5 on our company banner. It was pretty cool. So that's my I guess my thing. David, I'm sorry I didn't get to give you a heads up, but I pulled some comics before I sat down.
Yeah, no problem.
Coming in from work.
I've got mine. So growing up, I was a huge, just standard comic books. I mean, I loved Spider-Man, Batman, but the one that really, and I've always been a fan of horror, and so Ghost Rider was the one that for me, when that came out, that like hooked me. Like I was buying every single issue and just like getting into the lore and starting to track down back issues from before I was born and all these other things. Like that was the one that really grabbed me outside of just casual fandom. And then in like the early mid 90s, I started getting more into independent presses, and so like London Night Studios was a big one. They had a super heroine called Razor that I was really into, and then I discovered James O'Barr and the Crow right as the movie was coming out, and that was that, like seeing how these stories could no longer be just geared for like a mainstream audience of like everybody at a comic shop, but like the back corner where it was like the black and white comic books and the freshly stapled and pressed and stories that not everybody was going to get into, but I started really gravitating more towards that.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because I think Nate and I are kind of the same boat. So I started collecting in '92, right when Image started. So I just dove right into Image stuff and pretty much never left. So.
Yeah.
For me, it was kind of like born with a comic in your hand sort of a deal. I was the youngest of 4. And like when I say the youngest, like you talk about an oops baby, it was like, oh, oops, oh my God, baby. Because my oldest brother is 13 years older than I am. And then the youngest before me is 10 years older than I am. Wow. So, there's like a 10 to 13 year gap. So my older brothers were both into comic books, and I would get Spider-Ham comics from them and things like that and tear them apart and all this kind of stuff. But as Nick had mentioned earlier, when you're dealing kind of like with the teenage angst and all that kind of stuff. And I got into heavy metal. That was my thing. I was a big heavy metal kid. I loved Megadeth and Metallica and White Zombie. And then comic books were kind of this thing that nobody else was really into. But I knew more about them just by listening to my brothers talk. So then I started reading them. I started reading X-Men. And then it was Batman. I've always loved Batman. But when I got to read the comic book version of Batman, it was like, this isn't the guy I'm watching in the movies at all. This isn't the Michael Keaton stuff at all. It's certainly not the Adam West stuff. And I've never left. I mean, a little bit here and there, thought it was tried to be too cool, or, let's face it, when you're in your late teens, early 20s, you're like looking at the ladies, you're like, comic books, those funny books. Yeah, not me, but
Yeah,
eventually,
I don't read comic books now, ladies. Yeah, right.
I know.
yeah. But that's my story with comic books, and very grateful for their invention, should I say?
Absolutely.
What are you guys reading now? Do you guys still read or still collect?
Yeah. So for me, there is.
Going back
I
to the
am
pile.
really into a book called Something is Killing the Children. That is trigger warning. It's got a lot of violence against children, but done in a fantastical horror way, not like, like real life abuse and stuff like that. But it is, I mean, it's definitely not gonna be for everybody, but I absolutely love it. I think it's an amazing horror comic book. It's very it deals with like some mystical imagery and some really cool very gritty storyline that another reason I love comic books is because you can tell any story you want to, and it's not always going to be like what everybody else is going to want to particularly read. But this one I think is it's for Boom Comics, I believe, and so it's pretty, it's not like a small run press or anything, but it's definitely not for everybody, but I think it's really cool.
Nice, very
Nate?
nice.
I'm not I don't read as much as I used to. I think Agents of Atlas, there was a small run for them that I enjoyed reading. This is the one I got most recently. Kind of into like finding rarities. There's only 788 copies of this.
Nice.
And then found this Black Panther at this is made especially for a shop in Oakland, and it's by Jamal Campbell. If you guys know Jamal Campbell, I have more fun kind of collecting for the imagery. Like for Night of the Chihuahuas, I love the story and trying to make fun covers that pop, that make you want to pick it up. But I know some people are just about this artist or limited edition or whatever, and it's like hopefully we're trying to bring both of those things, because David he interacts with people at the booth, and when he talks and they hear what he's saying, it's almost like an instant like look of joy on their face, like really. So that we're I don't want to veer too much from your question, but it just
No, that's fine. We can get into it.
well, no, it's just a balance, like,
Oh, sure.
David reading Something is Killing the Children. I've seen that. It looks terrifying to me. David is more in line with that. I'm enjoying the campy part of Night of the Chihuahuas. Yeah. But
Well,
yeah.
that's like
Yeah,
one
there's no trigger warnings necessary for Night of the Chihuahuas unless you've been attacked by a Chihuahua as a kid, in which point this
Right.
might be
yeah,
a little
trauma
much.
warning. Yeah, yeah. Like one of my favorite books that I'm reading right now is from was it Joe Hill's line? I think it's like Heads in a Refrigerator.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's just weird off the wall stuff. Where it's just there's actually one issue where this severed head is trying to get back to its body, and it's literally just like almost like a Disney movie where trying to get back home. So trust me,
Nice.
I understand, but yeah, let's get into it a little bit. So I'll say this: one of the things I love about your guys' book is just the state of I'll say popular comic books. There's no message, there's no platform, there's no preaching or anything. It's just trying to tell a fun story, and it was just such a that's refreshing. I just want to sit down and read a comic book and have fun, because that's what comic books are supposed to be, right? And we were talking a little bit earlier about why we call the show The Escape, and because we believe escapism is important. And it sounds weird to say, but we believe comic books are important because when you're a nerdy kid who doesn't have the best childhood, sometimes that's all you got growing up. Either that or a show like Star Trek to go to a different galaxy, or Star Wars where you can just go somewhere else. These things, we believe these things are important. So
Absolutely, absolutely. I
Yeah.
100% agree. And this was very much an homage to, like, as a kid growing up, it was like all these monster movies that I loved. And, it's for an hour and a half watching one of these movies. You were in that world. You were taken away from all the problems that you have and all the things that you should be concerned about. But it's like, give me, if I mean, especially in today's day and age, if you can give me like 10-15 minutes of escapism, of I'm just gonna enjoy this. And for our comic book, it's like, this wacky mayhem of what happens if a bunch of chihuahuas are tearing people apart. And it's funny. It's done in a fun way. And we approached it from that point of view of, we wanted to have fun with it. It's a very campy, hopefully without being too in on its own joke. But starting with issue 3 and stuff like that, we really get into some more utilizing the full, instead of just, at this point we've already seen chihuahuas, what happens when they get a hold of people. We're going to start having more fun with, instead of just limbs being lost and people not thinking that they're gonna, this thing can't possibly take care of me. Oh no, it did. We're really gonna get into some creative kills and stuff. And so hopefully readers will, if you like the first 2 issues, I think you're gonna really love the next ones.
Well, that's the one thing that you said without getting too much into its own joke. You've got the one main character who's terrified of chihuahuas, which we don't know why yet. And everybody, everybody's giving him a hard time about it. But then all of a sudden, when they see the violent and rabid chihuahuas, everybody is 10 times, more afraid of those than he is. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
I guess like where I'm going with this question is, the book's called Night of the Chihuahuas. Obviously, we're all big horror fans here. And is there a connection with like Night of the Living Dead that's near and dear to your heart? Because there's a couple beats in there where, he's out of gas,
Yep.
and he has to get back into the truck that's out of gas.
Yeah,
And,
we do have some classic Hollywood horror tropes. Yeah, we got that out of gas. We have the I'm gonna say premarital sex having teenagers, who clearly have it coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is there anything like near and dear to your heart about that story, or was it just like, I got this idea for rabid chihuahuas, and I think it would fit good into if we worked with this framework,
Well, I mean, Night of the Living Dead is one of my top 5 films of all time. When I was teaching film classes, and I used that as when I was teaching about the 60s, I always added, and it was funny because like the kids would learn from, like we'd go from like Citizen Kane and On the Waterfront and Night of the Living Dead. But I really, because I mean, it's a great movie that it does offer a lot of lessons that can be learned from it, and I used it instructionally, not just because I'm a big horror geek, but it's one of my all-time favorite movies. The thing I love about that movie the most is that it's a movie where these people really shouldn't have been in as much danger as they were. If you think about it, like George Romero zombies, and that's the point of the original Dead trilogy, is that these things are not one-on-one, they're not a problem. If 5 people are against 5 zombies, it really shouldn't be that much of a problem. It's because you cannot work together to overcome this obstacle, and your own personal infighting, your own interpersonal conflicts are going to prevent you from emerging victorious in this. And I always loved that idea. And so, yes, it's very much Night of the Living Dead, where a group of survivors, they're trapped in a house, which, spoiler alert, in this comic book, eventually they will be trapped in a house. And then the roles that they're all supposed to play will slowly start devolving because of the fact that, there's a threat outside the house that they cannot work together to overcome.
That's a great take.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I think there's a fine line, because like I'm a big sci-fi guy, but it's one of those things where you have the good science fiction that you hold on to so tight because there's so much bad out there. And kind of the same with horror, where like there's a balance, there's a fine art to, to laying out all the personalities, and then you see a piece of work that is Night of the Living Dead, and then you see another movie, you're like, well, this is terrible. This is, you clearly just have a bunch of morons just being morons. Yes, you deserve to die. Please kill them,
Yeah, for sure. And so we wanted to, I didn't want to rip off Night of the Living Dead, but obviously the title of the comic is, an homage in and of itself, and then we just kind of went from there. But I mean, that the title was also done very much with the point of you want to sell the audience. Hey, when people walk by our booths at the Comic Cons, they're like, "Oh, what do you guys got?" It's called Night of the Chihuahuas. It's about killer chihuahuas. Bam! It's like we know right there. Is this your thing or not? Because some people will laugh and walk away. Some people are like, "Okay, I need to hear more."
Right.
Right.
Like,
And when Nick, that was funny because when Nick told me about it, I was like, I'm listening.
well, as I say, either you get it or you don't. Either you're
Very
like
much so.
you're either you get the joke instantly, or you're like said, no, not for me. But that's one of those things that you need to have. You need to have that you're hooked or you're not. And I
Yep.
think that's one of the great. Just from the title alone, I was just like, eh, I love that whole title, and that's one of the reasons I was so happy. I was like, I just love what you guys are doing. I'm so excited, and
Thank you very
I hope,
much.
and I really hope everything works out for you guys. But like I said, I got just a ton of questions for you. Adam, do you have a quick question?
Go ahead, roll on. I just asked.
Okay, so in the homage, so is the style of going black and white, is that an homage style, or is that also uh a budget type of issue, or was it be like to go print in black and white for the comic?
Well, Night of the Living Dead, George Romero shot on black and white because it was way cheaper than color. Color film was readily available, but
It'd be like, and if the same reason to say, be like, yep, okay, got it.
yeah. Yeah, so that was definitely not when I set about writing this, it wasn't intentionally like, we're going to make it in black and white to capture that. It was very much a
Good.
cost issue at that point. It was like,
It
hey,
cost this for this or this for this, but this, okay,
yep.
yeah.
Although, I mean, a lot of my favorite comic books are also black and white. And, I always think back to The Crow. And, I don't know if you guys remember in like the early mid 90s, but they did a run of Night of the Living Dead comic books where it was black and white art and it was done by an artist named Carlos Castro, I believe. But amazing artwork. And it was all black, but it was done in like this very macabre, fantastical style. And that definitely was in the back of my head as we were kind of mapping this out as well.
Yeah, we started off with an artist named RC Torres. Initially, we work with an investor named Ryan and RC. In RC, you'll see his style in the first and second issue, and then he did everything in grayscale, and yeah, it was a cost consideration. And we're shifting into working with Albert Morales, which his artwork appears on the cover of issue 2. I think you guys got, and at the end, and once again with his style, which is awesome. It does come down to like, what can we make happen? I guess what can we afford?
Right.
So you get the idea, and his presentation is great. So I mean, if we were to add a colorist and all those things, it would be cool. But it's just it's not necessary. I don't think you get the value from what you see, and I mean, yeah, the goal is to make a comic book, and we could try to put bells and whistles on it. But I think the story carries itself in black and white just fine.
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't. It was just that as soon as I opened it up, I'm like, oh, black and white. Oh, immediately, Night of the Living Dead. Oh, this is a horror book. So it was just like,
That's awesome.
Adam?
It fits. Yeah, no, the black and white I fits in well, and I totally understand why utilizing it at this stage in the game. Do you think you'd ever, do a special edition, colorize it, or anything like that?
I think it'd be fun. I think it'd be a lot of fun. If this thing takes off and we're able to do something like that, I would love to. I also would really love to do a sequel, and so it's like it's like hopefully we get enough where we can do both. Going back and colorizing it, I think would be really cool. I don't think anybody's gonna be like, oh my god, I never realized that her eyes were blue or anything like that. But I think just some of the mayhem of the once people get ripped apart and all this other things, I think that could be really fun. That's where it would be fun to get into the full color spectrum of all the viscera and organs and blood and all that.
I think
Yeah,
Well, you
for
got a couple of guys that show up in the comics, and they're kind of mouthy, not taking anything seriously, and they immediately get like eaten. And Nick and I were talking about these two guys. Are those guys based off of like people you might have known at one time? And Nick's shaking his head. Yes, people you
That's
might
a-
have known at one point.
it was actually kind of a position of honor. Ryan is the one with stars. Ryan really has tattoos of stars on his arm. I think it's his left arm. And the other one was a friend, Ken. And those are those people.
Yes, they were based on real people.
Nice.
Kind of.
You can tell. You can be like those are people they know, and either they really like them or they really don't like them. So
And I do want to backtrack a second. We are planning on doing a Kickstarter, and we will have a black, white, and blood edition of the
Oh, that'd be
issues.
great.
So
I was gonna say if you did like a, cause I always think of Frank Miller when I was watching one of the behind the scenes for when they did Sin City, and he's like they only use color in certain places, and you want to say you almost use color like a weapon, So
Mhm.
if
Yeah.
you use just the black, white, and red, that'd be awesome. So.
yeah, we hope to do that, and I think in labor wise to put it, it's possible, and that's our plan for the Kickstarter, is to have these special Kickstarter edition only black, white, and blood, or black, white, and red editions.
Yeah, so
How's the reception of the comic book going right now?
Well, nobody's asked for their money back, so that's good. It seems to be, we found an audience. We're very grateful for everybody's support that we have received. Up to this point, we really have not been dipping into any advertising. We really haven't, with the exception of like a few small, like, for instance, we did like a promoted post on Instagram, but it was targeted to the Phoenix area in advance of an event that we were going to. But everything's been word of mouth and just kind of, reaching into our own social networks, and like, I send something out on my Twitter account or on Instagram or something. So everything that we've sold up to this point has been either people know us, heard about it, or they found it at a comic book store, but without seeing like a web ad or anything crazy like that.
That's brilliant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of the things I was wondering about. So I've seen some of the posts about guys picking up your comics in comic book stores. What's the process like that to try and get your book into a store? I know certain stores I go to, they have an independent rack or whatever, but just getting your own book and trying to do the sales process to a comic book store owner, what's that like?
From my experience, it seems that the independent portion of the store is geared toward local artists mostly. The trade or cutoff or whatever the stores offer is pretty significant, because they feel that they're taking a risk on you. So we initially, I started going to stores here in the Phoenix Valley, and I believe we got into 4 or 5 stores. And then we thought to kind of readjust our strategy, because we're not making as much money. If you're Marvel and you go to every comic book store across the nation and you make pennies on the dollar, well, you're making a ton of money. We're not doing that. And I learned the hard way, because I tried to negotiate with some people and they just shut the door on me, and it sucked. And I was even like, hey, let me, like, I'm trying to learn, like, help me, what can I do to make this work? And I was just like,
what did I say?
no, it was bad. And then I'm from the Northern California, and I went up there recently, and I went out and I just started visiting comic shops, and everybody was super cool. And then they started referring me to other shops and people to other shops. And before we know it, we were in 5 different shops up there. And actually have a check sitting right here from Northern California, our first payment.
Awesome.
So on a consignment basis. But yeah, I mean, we talked to one owner, and he's really big on us getting into Previews magazine and selling at a lower price point, and then getting around the nation. But I'm pretty much the one that's going to have to go region by region and make calls and talk to people. It's a great idea. And it'll take a lot of work. And in the meantime, everyone, we're going to be at Phoenix Fan Fusion, so come by. So it's kind of a process of like learning to straddle both, I think. And it all this thing, marketing, everything has been a learning process. So yeah,
for sure. I always remember growing up, and it was like, you'd look through the there was these big old basically like phone book looking catalogs that you could get from the comic book store that showed all the issues that were coming out, and it was like, oh man, that looks cool. How do we just need to get in there? And it was like, oh, that's pretty damn difficult to get in there. Okay.
Is that, I think that is Previews, the
Yep.
Yeah. So
yeah, I've got one on my table out in the living room.
we were told after we get issue 3 done that it's possible for us to get into Previews, and I mean, I thought it was going to be David writes a story, Albert makes a picture, we put it in a book, and they give us money, and that's the end. And there's so many things that we're learning along the way, like, what we
kind of
have
like
to do.
Kind of going back to what we had talked about earlier, where it was like, because I know I'm dealing with the same thing from family as well, where people are like, oh, well, what, you just make the book and put it out there and then people buy it, right? And you're like, it's actually a very saturated marketplace with, lots of people hustling their wares and their abilities, and, trying to stand out and trying to find a niche and trying to just, our experience has been, if we get in front of somebody, they typically, if this is their thing, they do enjoy it. We don't have people that are like, hey, I love horror comedies, but your book sucked. It's people that like horror comedies love this comic book. It's just finding them. It's just getting in front of them. And, there's algorithms to all the social media. So even if you do make a post, and I'm like, hey, I've got over 1,000 followers on social media, and I made this post and 3 people liked it. And then when I click on the thing and it says that only 100 people even saw it, it just feels like an uphill battle sometimes. And I'm like, how do researching and trying to make that work without spending the money of, let's pay to get it out there, or let's pay a marketer to do this for us.
Yeah, it's like one big thing I've been trying to build on is that Chihuahuas are a really big deal in Japan. And I've found pages where one Chihuahua will have like 25,000 followers. And all they do is put a little outfit on their Chihuahua every day and take a picture. And it's a thing. I also found out today doing research that Japan holds 43% of the comic book market in the world by itself.
Really?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
So guess where we're going to start marketing.
Hey.
It's a whole different language. It's, but it is a thing. I think David and I have talked about, is trying to reach out in different ways, because like we have a cover that we're working on right now. I'll spill the beans. It's Chizilla. It's a Godzilla Chihuahua. I don't know if I should show it. I just have a picture on my phone, but Albert's been working on it. It's awesome. And
we'll just point people to your social media later. They can check it out.
Yeah. Well,
there we go.
Who couldn't love Chizilla? I mean,
it sounds amazing. I haven't even seen it yet, but it seems amazing. So I'm excited already.
Well, if they like Jawawas, then they will like.
I said that sounds like something that should go on a shirt. That for sure.
We will do that. In fact, if I make
I
one,
should have worn my shirt.
One. Yeah.
Danny, I see you in the chat. Thanks for showing up.
How you doing, Danny?
One of the things you kind of touched on a little bit. What are some of the unforeseen things that you didn't even consider when trying to make your own comic book? Because like I said, you're like, well, we just write it and we put pictures to it and magic happens, right? What were some of the some of the pitfalls maybe that you're like, wow, that did not even occur to me that needed to be done to get a comic book out.
Jeez, I mean, a lot of the printing and stuff like that is like one of the things that, and I know Nate could probably speak to this a little bit more than me, but when you spend more money the less you print, but you spend less per issue the more you print, but there's a lot more risk because then you're like, oh, okay, well, I've got 2,000 comic books that nobody wants. And granted, they only cost me $1 to print, so instead it's like
But
you approach
that's
the
still
initial.
$2,000.
Yeah, exactly. So instead, you were approaching it with smaller print runs where it's like, okay, but now it's going to cost us more per issue to print. And so now that becomes a factor of, sometimes that shows I'm just the writer, and so I get to get all carried away. And I'm like, who wants a comic book? Here you go, have him. And I'm like, oh crap, I just lost $40. I just gave away $40 worth
just
of
gave it away. Yeah.
yeah. It's costs, schedule, like how long a project takes, and this is something I address at the end of issue number 2, but it's I think if you do this for a living, if you're a comic book writer and writer and artist, and this is what you do for a living, you're doing it. I mean, let's be honest, you're doing it more than 8 hours a day, probably more than 5 days a week, but you're going to be able to crank out a monthly issue. When you're dealing with guys like us who are, we have our day jobs, we have families, we have these things, and we're trying to do this comic book. When our obligations, all these other things fall apart, or not fall apart, hopefully not fall apart, but when all these other obligations are over with, then we're able to work on this issue. And it's like that draws out that process so much that unfortunately some team members have to move on to other opportunities, which is exactly what happened with our first artist, RC Torres, where we loved his work, we had nothing bad happen. It's just, hey man, we've been working on this for a few months, I got an opportunity for something that's going to take up even more of my time, I can no longer work on this on the side, kind of thing. And that's, having been a part of independent film productions and having friends who are musicians and having people who do art, it's just kind of comes with the territory of when you're doing it as a side gig or as a hustle that you're trying to get into a full-time thing, until it's a full-time thing, it's going to take a lot longer than you think, and the grind is going to be a lot more intensive than you probably realized or hoped. So
yeah, I'll just echo David, is the amount of time that I put into it, marketing, trying to do sales. My wife is a graphic designer, and she helps, and even to watch her lay out the comic and do things to get us looking presentable, it's just a lot. Learning about like taxes, and David and I, like you said, coming from film, we've really tried to take care of our paperwork of like ownership and things like that, but there's been hiccups with that. And then just trying to contact people. We ran into, in the Bay Area, I came across a store owner named Leia. Let's say it right, because she corrected me. She's awesome. She's like super networker. But she said, do you have any females working on your comic book? And I said, no. And she said, well, you should
have told your wife, man.
But she meant like artists, and
yeah.
I said no, and that's a good point. Like, so I started looking at trying to contact female artists, and I reached out, got in touch with someone like Peach Momoko, who just did Ghost Rider, Demon Days. She has a ton of work out, and she responded, which I thought was super cool because she's so busy, and said, I'm under contract with Marvel. I can't, but your project looks fun. Another artist named Tula Lotte, she responded, and I asked her, I said, do you know anyone? Could you recommend anyone? And she responded with a list of female artists to try and reach out to. But I mean, all this stuff just adds up, and the amount of time that goes into it is just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys
what I would advise anybody who wants to get into this is like, I mean, the same thing I always tell when I was teaching film production and writing and stuff, but I would always tell my students this. I was like, dude, if you don't love this, go be a communications major, go be something else. Like, don't get into this unless you are passionate about this and like you're willing to give your blood, sweat, and tears to make it happen. Because if you don't, it's it's not an easy or casual enough thing where if you're not willing to do that, it's still going to happen. It's not, unless you've already connected, it's like, yeah, well, my dad works at Marvel and he could publish it. Well, then why are you listening to me? I mean, go make your work then. But it's, if you're trying to do it this way, the independent way, like, it is going to be long nights and lots of sacrifices and lots of things, and your success is not guaranteed even after all of that. So, if you're doing it because you love it, because it's something that, you feel like you got a story that that the world, I think the world needs killer chihuahuas. I think with everything else going on in the world right now, I think we could really use some lighthearted escapist fun of, mutant killer chihuahuas terrorizing a small town in southern Arizona. So, we're out there, knocking on doors, shaking hands, and just trying to get it out there.
God, yes, I
Well,
agree.
it's just like any other, entrepreneur, venture. If you talk to any entrepreneur, successful entrepreneur, you can't be half in. You got to be all in or all out. There's very little in between. But like you said, when you got family and all this stuff, trying to get something like that off the ground, it's it's difficult. But yeah, I understand it, because like I said, we're trying to do the YouTube thing, and the YouTube and any other social media. It's like, it's consistent. You have to keep doing it. You have to keep, like I said, to get into algorithm, you got to play the game. There's certain points in the formula you have to hit, and if you're not hitting them, you're not getting in that algorithm. So we try and do at least one show a week, and then sometimes we do two, but that's at my wife's discretion. Where anything more, I usually have to ask for permission, because my wife's like, "You talk to him more than me." I'm like, "I'm sorry, but I'm trying to do this
Wow.
thing."
I didn't know.
Understand that.
I keep my personal life and my business life separate, but yeah, it's definitely one of those. I understand. It's the, hey, yeah, it's tough to get anything, especially when you're going grassroots, man. Yeah, like you said, you
Yeah.
got a kid who's like, "Oh, hey, my dad works at Marvel." Be like, then why are we talking? why are we here? and I am doing you no help. But I got my buddy Danny in the chat. He wants to know, can we order directly from David and Nathan? So if they do want to order a comic, do they go to Knights of the Chihuahua, correct?
Chihuahuas plural.
Nightofthechihuahuas.com. Yep.
Chihuahuas.com. So I had that on the banner. I'll put that back. So, Adam, you got any
There's
you got
the
a question?
Yeah, actually, I was just about to go to nightofthechihuahuas.com.
It's a good looking website.
Just start ordering my stuff. No, it's absolutely been nothing but a pleasure and an honor to meet you guys. And is there any plans, right now to, go outside of Arizona with the, like another Comic-Con or anything like that? Like a roadshow tour?
We are in the initial planning stages, trying to figure out how else we can make different ones work. And so, obviously, when gas is $5 a gallon, it's a little bit harder to drive to. We were just out in California, and it was funny because I was like, "Oh, I was talking about coming back out here and trying to bring some more to the LA area, and I might wait a little while." But
Grab some
there
gas cans
are
before.
what's that?
Grab some gas cans while you're in a cheaper state. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we're talking about trying to make something else happen, but for the right now, the focus is on just trying to see how we can draw more attention to our website and build sales through that. But yeah, there's so many conventions, there's so many great events that happen all over the country, and if we could figure out a way to make that travel work to a different part, I think that could build our base a lot more. Because like I said, I mean, people seem to enjoy it. We're not out here hawking something that is that people feel ripped off about or don't want. So it'd be cool to get it in front of some more people.
Yeah, and I think you said so. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think our main focus is going to be through the Southwest and into Northern California, probably Las Vegas, maybe out to Austin. Want to hit up El Paso. and then going back east would be, I think, quite a bit harder because the amount of money that we would make at a con might not offset the travel. So, but we'll see. You never know. I mean,
Yeah.
you talk about algorithms. I mean, you keep doing something, opportunities will arise, and who knows? I mean, maybe the Escape podcast will blow up and fly us out to Detroit at some point.
Or maybe,
Yeah, I love Detroit. I've been out there a few
Hey.
times, so
it's underrated, but
I agree.
hey, you want to send us, some copies, we can, send them, see if some of our stores will put them in. What's the worst that could happen? But
We'll read them out loud on the show because that's
Hey,
gonna be
hey,
that's gonna be a new section. That's gonna be a new segment here. We actually just read a comic last night out loud. It just kind of see how it would go.
because
well.
our show's the Escape podcast. We're like, how can we work in? Because we're not escaping enough. So we tried doing like the news, and we were telling Nate earlier, it's like, man, our last episode was dark. I was like, well, we were just going through news. He's like, that news cycle sucked. I was like,
Yeah.
I agree. So what's the way that we
that news?
Yeah, we should skip the news. Well, we'll just hit the highlights. But one of the things that we were like, hey, what if we do this and just have fun? We took a Batman 66 and a Green Hornet issue, and we just reenacted it. We had fun. Adam was Kato, so
That's awesome.
He was Kato and Bruce Wayne. So
and the Adam West Batman.
Yeah, Adam West Bat. So that's one.
Oh, that must have been awesome.
It was just we should we should have recorded that. That was fun. So that's something we're gonna try and work into the show. But yeah, just like you said, always trying to evolve, always trying to figure out what gets you in the algorithm, because you get and that was one of the things, like we're nerds. We'll talk to other nerds. There's a bunch of nerds out there. Well, there's lots of other nerds who are on YouTube too that are trying to do the same thing, and we're like, well, yeah, just like you guys. How do you set yourself apart? That's always the tricky thing. So
yeah.
And there's a lot of weight. I mean, a lot of weight in what you just said. That the world, does need some killer Chihuahuas right now. You know what I mean? It's something that the whole world takes itself too seriously. That's why I mentioned the other day, I said that news that got dark with that news there. And my suggestion was, if say Doctor Strange is coming out on the 3rd, let's just say Doctor Strange is coming out on the 3rd, and let's move on. We don't have to talk about it, just in case.
Oh God, really?
So,
right?
Right. So.
All right. So what do we got here? So our main characters. I apologize. Our main characters are escaping me right now.
And Samantha?
Yep. So
Yeah.
What's the inspiration from those characters? I know we said some of the characters were inspired by some people. Are any of our main characters? What's the inspiration for those guys?
I have always been drawn to like strong female protagonists. Like James Cameron has always, Ripley, going from Ripley to Sarah Connor to everybody that he features. And so when I started plotting out the story, I always had in mind a female police officer would be working in tandem with the male, who the male officer is going to be a little bit less competent, a la Leon Kennedy in Resident Evil 4 and onwards. It's like he definitely is not, I mean, even though he's an action star, he's not the most with it person all the time. And so I made him a little bit even more bumbling than that. He does, he has a character arc over the course of the 5 issues, so he's not going to remain as incompetent as he is. But also, too, he represents Tucson, which is the city of my birth. So I had to I couldn't make him a complete fool. But that was very much inspired. So there are some Resident Evil influences sprinkled throughout the series, and his name is definitely one of them. And I, believe it or not, I named her after my dog at the time. So my dog was a part Pekingese, part Chihuahua named Samantha, and she was hideously ugly, but she was so ugly she was adorable. Like everybody would see her going, she's so ugly, she's so cute. It's like one of those types of things.
Oh, so ugly. Oh.
Yeah, because she was so ugly. But so Samantha was named, so Officer Samantha is named after my dog. And then growing up, my childhood dog Coco was a Chihuahua that lived to be like 19 and was one of the meanest dogs ever. And so Erica's dog Coco is named after her. So always a love for Chihuahuas.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Pulling on my heartstrings there, naming it after real pets. So
I
Yeah.
I think you kind of answered one of my questions. So is this series a set run? You said 5 issues. Is that the planned run for this one?
Yeah, so the story is going to resolve itself in 5 issues. There are other stories planned. So it's not going to be the end, that's not going to be the end of the Chihuahua mayhem. Of course, we have to escalate it and get a little bit crazier with the second series, which is going to be subtitled Chihuahuas from Hell. And we have plans for more, but unfortunately, I've been doing this long enough to know that, don't get too invested in those later seasons and don't, you can't you can't count on a payoff later because a lot of times these projects, unfortunately, for one reason or another, you may not reach there. So I'm trying to tell as much cool, fun story as I can in these first 5, which we know will happen. And then hopefully we set the base and, create a big enough audience that they want that next series. And then, we just keep building from there.
So are we building a Chihuahua universe?
There is an extended universe that does involve, there are nefarious forces at play that are behind, the Chihuahuas obviously got the way that they were for a reason. There are many forces at play behind that, and we get to go deeper into what those forces are and their ultimate plans and why they chose Chihuahuas and stuff.
The CEU. I'm excited. Can't wait.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys saw there's one artist, JT, on our Instagram page, and I asked him to draw a mutant Chihuahua, and he started drawing X-Men Chihuahua.
Oh,
It was like a Chihuahua Cyclops, Chihuahua Colossus. That was my favorite.
And Wolverine.
That's
I heard he's going to do another one, but
and they need to be the versions of like the 90s comics ones where they were fun and they hung out on the beach and played volleyball and stuff. Not the movie X-Men where they're like
dour,
yeah,
dour and serious, and no way. Give me the blue and gold jumpsuits any day.
Yes, please, God.
Is it one of these?
Oh,
yeah, there's.
Yep.
And
oh, that's so great.
That is awesome.
He's the next one is going to be Storm.
Yes. Please
never
tell me
to
she's
stop.
gonna. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, I know they did such a good job.
Fantastic.
So, Adam, you got anything else?
No, just a big fan over here. I'm just fanboying out on everything. I mean, one of the things that made me laugh real hard is she pepper sprayed. I'm looking at her right now. Pepper sprays him while he's driving here, telling him to pull over the car. And I mean, it's just like such a serious situation. Yet there's so much levity to it, and he can't help but laugh. And then he's driving even further. He's like, "Oh, I've taken worse in the face than that before." Wait a minute, that's not what I meant. I've walked myself into stupid sayings like that so many times.
Yeah. He has many more of those moments, I promise you.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it kind of modeled him after Ash in Evil Dead as far as like his man, like he's a very, like Bruce Campbell is such like a good looking, like tough guy, but then Ash is such a bumbling, especially around ladies and stuff. And so that was kind of some of that I try to put in there.
Give me some sugar, baby, right?
Yeah.
You did a good job with that one, I'll tell you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, so what is, I know there was a little bit of time in between issues 1 and 2. What's the time frame for the production for you guys? When do you expect to have the obviously one issue, issue 3, but approximately how big of what's the production date looking like for you guys to get this? Are you planning getting it wrapped up within the year or a few months? Or
that is a great question.
So we know that issue number 3 will be done
as soon as possible.
Issue number 3 will be done by before the end Memorial Day weekend.
Okay.
Issue number 3 will be printed, ready to go. Beyond that, I mean, we're hoping, it's
Sure.
So issue 3 comes before Memorial Day weekend.
Yep.
So
That's
keep
the
your eyes
plan.
peeled. So
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
So within
can't
6
wait.
weeks, and then hopefully from then we can keep building on that momentum. Obviously Albert Morales, our artist, it's gonna rely a lot on him, and I don't want to make promises for him, but if we can get it done by the end of the summer, that'd be amazing. The realities are just gonna be kind of like we're dealing with. There's a lot of moving parts that we're dealing with that, if it was as easy as just saying yes, it's gonna be done. Then I wish we could offer that answer.
Albert's working on a couple projects, and I think our goal, in reality, by fall, and that's one of the things, the struggles that we find is, Albert's got a family, he's got a full-time job, he's one man, he's very talented, and like David said, we can't promise for him, but we're just doing our best, working to make it happen. And Phoenix Fan Fusion, Albert, if it's not done, David and I are coming to your house, and I don't want to make any threats because he might come to my house, but
they all know where everybody lives. So
yeah, we just want to get it done. So
I'm not threatening him. I'm just saying I'm going to pump him full of this beautiful white powder that will magically make him crank out these pages. That's all.
it just happens to be from Colombia, so whatever.
It just, my buddy Pablo hooked me up, so that's all.
Oh man.
All right. Nerdy question. Are you guys, is there any plans for possibly like a action figure line or like reaching out in different mediums, anything like that?
Yep.
Yes.
We do have some plans. Keep your eyes out for that Kickstarter, because I think we're going to have some goodies offered as bonuses for, depending on how much money you're willing to throw at our project.
Sure.
And
then afterwards,
some of the things that have come up that I didn't really think about. Talked to someone at Microsoft recently, Xbox specifically, that said that our product would be great for a game because it's kind of silly and
game.
Popular right now. NFTs, I'm still learning about.
Same.
Someone saw the cover, the Fifi cover that you guys have, and we're going to try to get that online. But there's the creature. What did you say? Action figures. It would be awesome. I think one thing we're challenged with finding is a 3D modeler. So, but there's a lot of avenues that are opening up that I didn't even think about. Sure. So, and I mean, obviously, if somebody says movie or Netflix or whatever, then that would be cool too.
Yeah, as soon as you said Microsoft, I was like, Knights of Chihuahua would be the perfect mobile game. That would be a fantastic. So,
for
I wish I could hook you guys up with that, but I'm just an idea man. I don't really do much. So.
I'll tell you what, I don't know a guy.
Hey, you know what? Guess what? Neither do I. So
maybe Danny that's watching works for Microsoft, and that's why he's watching.
Danny.
Yeah, I say Danny knows people. So if anybody can get you a guy, it might be Danny. So it might not be totally legal, but he might find you a guy.
Fingers crossed.
Right. So what's for the future for you guys? I know we talked, kind of broadly. So we have work on issue 3. Hopefully that's coming out by Memorial Day. You guys have any other projects that you guys are working on, or is this mainly Knights of Chihuahua was the main project?
So I've got my fingers in a couple of other projects going on right now. The plotting out a comic book for a friend of mine who's got a card game out called Powerline Ultra that's going to be coming out in August, and we're trying to get something put together for him because he created a really cool world and story. So keep an eye out for that. And then a movie that I wrote that's in post production right now called Big Buck Massacre, that we shot it in Wisconsin, and it's all about this like sales team on a corporate retreat who runs afoul of a zombie deer. So it is another creature feature horror comedy, and
I'm in. I love that idea. That's my jam, right?
Have you ever seen that video by Queens of the Stone Age? That's what just popped in my head right now with the deer fight back. Yeah.
yep, it's a
That,
little bit of an
that'll
influence there.
that'll play great in the Midwest because we're all I'm not a hunter, but everybody else is a hunter up here. So
Yeah.
that'll definitely play well up here.
David,
Yeah, it's like The Office meets that Queens of the Stone Age music video, where like this sales team that all hate each other and they hate their manager, and then they're getting picked off one by one by a deer that's afflicted with a crazy disease. So
Nice.
David
All right,
has
Adam.
a never-ending slew of awesome ideas.
I'm gathering that. I've got this going on. I got this going on. Oh, just the movie, just the some other stuff going on. No big deal.
yeah, so hopefully that'll be out. It's like I said, it's in post production, so hopefully it'll be coming out here sometime this summer. So we'll keep your eyes peeled, because I'll try to see if we can cross promote that with Night of the Chihuahuas.
Is that a movie that would go to like smaller film festivals, or how is the movie? I assume it's a smaller indie production. So, where would someone be able to kind of check that out? Or
it's kind of I'm just the screenwriter, so I don't have any control over exhibitions of it. But I know that there were a few horror festivals that we wanted to kind of run it out through before going to distribution. But the distribution game right now with streaming and video on demand is pretty big for independent films, and so kind of like exactly what we were talking about. There are more avenues for you to be on, and it's harder for you to find an audience still. So we'll be contending with that, and then hopefully we can just hopefully it's I haven't seen the cut yet, so hopefully it is a good movie, and at the very least, hopefully people want to see a zombie deer. So we'll see.
Well, that reminds me of because one of my favorite things on Amazon Prime is Shudder, and
Yep.
It's one of those things where would that be I would say what it takes to even get a movie.
Yeah, so Shudder, the way that they acquire the films is definitely through it's almost impossible to just email them and say like, hey, I made a film, can you take a look at that?
Hi,
And so
you don't know me, but
yeah. So, but if you can build up enough rep, or either through the festival circuit or through your online presence or anything like that, and so trying to get their attention is something that's definitely on our list of things we're going to try to do as well.
Very
yeah,
cool.
when it comes to, like you said, you mentioned the streaming game. I was like, that's another just gigantic world that, man, how do you even navigate that world? It seems so big. So
yeah, it sucks too, because I've talked to producers who are like, can you name your script? Can we change the title to something with a number, because then you're listed at the start of the streaming queue, like when you open up your category on Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever. And I was just like, it's the fact that we're making creative decisions based on things like that is a little bit disheartening, but you got to do what you got to do.
I say, but that's how you get it in front of eyeballs. You got to think of stuff like that. So that didn't even occur to me to be like, yeah, if it is a number, then it would be at the beginning of whatever the alphabetical numeric thing. So it's just like that's crazy.
Yeah, we do. David and I produced, David wrote, and did you direct, Promise?
I did. Well, I hit record on the camera and said action, but yes.
We have a movie that's on streaming that was the project that we did together, and we had a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's funny because that the world of low budget filmmaking is so shady. It's like that distributor has stopped returning our calls like years ago, and it's like, but movie's still out there, so I'm sure that they've changed their. Yep, that's us.
And it's
on IMDb, so
it's on every
dream right there for me.
Yeah, it's on like every platform now, and it's like, what happened?
Yeah. So it's also, that one, if you saw the IMDb, you saw the IMDb score. Take that into account if you're thinking about watching it. It's definitely super. It was honestly, that's the movie that made me switch gears and say, you know what, I can't keep hitting my head against the wall trying to make a story that I can't tell, because I'm trying to tell a bigger story than what we can afford or what we have access to. And it was like, let's figure out a way to. And then, once again, it was like reading comic books, and I was like, oh my god, this is so amazing. Why am I not trying to tell these stories? Why am I chasing? Why am I trying to insist on making it work on video instead of just capturing the scope of it via a comic book and making something that I love?
Absolutely. And the best part about comic books is comic books can and always has been able to go places that film and television can't. More so today they can. Like you think about the Avengers movies and all the space movies, that are out there. 20 years ago, you wouldn't have an Avengers movie like in space or anything
Yeah.
like that. Or 30 years ago, it just wouldn't have been done. It wouldn't. And if they did do it, it would come out looking like something made for TV with David Hasselhoff called Shield. You know what I mean? But
oh man, I remember that. Yep.
How
yeah.
dare you?
but
Or
in
Roger
comic
Corman's
books,
Fantastic Four.
right? But in comic books, you can do that,
Mhm.
and you can tell the story you want to tell. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
All right. Well, I think is there anything else you guys want to promote while we're on here? So
I just want to say
No, I just
thanks
yeah.
to our team, everybody that's Mark, Leona, Albert, Chris Pence, Rob, my wife, my kids, and David.
I'm like his work husband, so yeah. So thank you, Nate. And I'll send a shout out to my wife Jessica and my daughter Charlotte, son Elias, who are very supportive and allow me to pursue this, because God knows I've only got so much time in the day, and I try to give them everything that I can, and do this when I can. But they allow me to do it more often than not. So I'm really appreciative of that. And Adam, Nick, I really wanted to thank you guys for having us on. This has been a great time, great
our
conversation.
pleasure,
And,
man.
always fun to meet fellow geeks. And hey, like I said, I'm not just saying that I love Detroit. I really do love Detroit, and I'd make it back out there, and hopefully we can get together and go tour some comic shops or see what's going on.
that'd
Sounds
be
like a plan, man.
fantastic. Yeah.
So,
I'm
but
in.
if someone wants their comic, where they go, guys?
Nightofthechihuahuas.com. If you're on Instagram or Facebook, you can follow us. It's just Night of the Chihuahuas, one word. And the link to nightofthechihuahuas.com is in there. Chihuahuas is a hard word, so pay attention when you're typing it in.
Yeah,
I've learned not to spell chihuahuas now. Yes,
a lot of typos, even for me, and I know how to spell it. So, thank you, everyone.
And if you guys are in the Arizona area, what comic shops can they go find your book at? If you want to tell.
We're in Dreadnought, Dreadnought Comics, Samurai Comics,
Atomic Comics if you're in the East Valley.
Atomic Comics, think Gary's Comics. And in San Francisco Bay Area, we're in Crush Comics, Cape and Cow in Oakland, Sour Cherry in San Francisco in the Mission District, Mission Comics also in the Mission District, and King Kong Comics out in Pleasanton.
Fantastic.
All right. Well, I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but I think we're going to be talking right around Memorial Day again to you guys.
I hope so.
And,
Yes, please.
anytime you guys want to hop on, anytime you guys just want to hop on, talk about comics, guys, shoot us a message, man. You guys are, it's been a lot of fun. And thanks so much to you guys for reaching out. I'm so happy we can make this happen. It's been a lot of fun. So
yeah, definitely. Thank you very much.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. You can go check us out at The Escape on Facebook and on YouTube, and we are at _escape_podcast on Instagram. So thanks so much, guys, and we'll be seeing you.
All right.
Cool.
See you guys.
Take care, everybody.